The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ once suspected that a Jewish boy in Medina was the Antichrist. The boy's name was Ibn Sayyad. So he took his companion Umar radiallahu ta'ala with him to go and question the boy. The boy was very disrespectful in his answers, and Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu was very angry. He said, "O Messenger of Allah, give me permission." I cut off his head. The Prophet said, "No, Umar, no. If he is the Antichrist, you cannot kill him. And if he is not, then it would be sinful to kill him." May I repeat that? If he is the Antichrist, you cannot kill him. And if he is not the Antichrist, it would be sinful to kill him. Implying that the possibility exists that he can be the Antichrist or DAJJAL. But that possibility could only exist if the Antichrist has been released into the world. And so implicit in this event is a message which is being communicated to the world, that the release of DAJJAL, the release of the Antichrist into the world, took place in the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. If he is released into the world, then where is he? We now come to another intriguing event. It is located in the Sunan in the Sahih of Imam Muslim. A companion of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he was Christian, he became Muslim. His name is Tamim Dari. He came to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and narrated an event which occurred. When we study the event critically, we come to the conclusion this could not have been an actual event, it had to be a vision. The Prophet listened, and then he said to the people, "Sit down, I have something to say to you." Tamim Dari came to me and told me something about the Antichrist, which confirms what I have been saying to you. And now we get the story from the blessed lips of the Messenger of Allah. What is the story? Tamim ad-Dari and some 30 or 40 of his companions went on board a ship. And then the storms came and blew the ship for a whole month before they arrived at an island. And when they got on shore, they got off the ship and they went on shore, they were confronted by a very hairy creature. Plenty hair, so much hair you could hardly tell which side is head and which side is tail. And then this creature spoke and said, I am Jassasa. Jassasa, spy. Surah Al-Hujurat, وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا, do not spy. So this is an island with a lot of people who excel in spying. And then Jassasa pointed to a monastery. There's someone waiting to see you there. And said, there's someone waiting to see you, pointing to a monastery which is lying in ruins. So number one, an island, which is about 1 month's distance from the Arab world. Number two, an island with expertise in spying, in espionage. Number three, an island in which religion will eventually crumble, collapse, lying in ruins. And most of the people will become atheists. So they rushed to the monastery. And there they found this young man, powerfully built, with curly hair, but there's no description about his eyes. His hands were chained to his neck, his feet were chained. And this man began to question Tamim Dari and his companions. A number of very interesting questions.
The man said to us, tell me about the palm trees of Baysan. Baysan is a city in Jordan. And he wanted to know whether there were palm trees planted in there or not. We said, what do you exactly want to know about Baysan in Jordan? He said, I ask you, are there more palm trees and have they be filled with dates or not yet? They said, yes, it is full of palm trees and full of dates, more than many other places in what we know. He said, soon its palm trees and dates will become scarce, will no longer give fruits. Today, really, in Jordan, dates are scarce now. It used to be in history abundance. He said, now explain to me about Buhayra Tabariya. They said, what do you want to know about it?
He asked, is there any water left in the Sea of Galilee?
He said, does it have water in it? They said, yes, there is lots of water. He said, soon its water is going to go away. It's not going to exist anymore. And truly today, the water has gone drier than before.
And then he said, I am DAJJAL. I am the Antichrist. I will enter every town and every city, but I will not be allowed to enter into Mecca and Medina because the angels will bar me. And so now we know, up to this moment in time, the Antichrist is not as yet released, but he is on an island which is about 1 month's journey away from the Arab world by sea. An island which has excellence in spying. And so now we know that when the message came from the Messenger of Allah that Dajjal has been released, we know that it is in this island that he is going to be released. And it is from this island that he will launch his mission to impersonate the Messiah and to eventually rule the world from Jerusalem. Question: which island is it? This is my answer. You do not have to agree with me. You are free to differ with me. But you cannot say that I am wrong until you can tell me what is the right answer. That's fair, isn't it? That's fair, isn't it? Come on, answer me. You cannot say that I am wrong until you can tell me what is right. Before we attempt to answer the question, let us turn to another hadith, another statement of the Prophet ﷺ, which is of crucial importance. It is also in Sahih Muslim, that when the Antichrist is released, he will live on earth for 40 days. 40 days. Yawmun kasana. One day like a year. Yawmun kashahr. One day like a month. Yawmun kajum'a. One day like a week. وَسَائِرُ أَيَّامِهِ كَأَيَّامِكُمْ. And all his days, implying all the rest of his days, would be like your days. And in the Bible, the mark of DAJJAL is 666, meaning 600 and then 60 and then 6. And our Prophet says, a day like a year, that's the 600. A day like a month, that's the 60. A day like a week, that's the 6. It's the same thing, using different languages. When his day, now listen carefully, when his day is like our day, he would be in our dimension of time. And when he is in our dimension of time, then we can see him. At that time, of course, he would be, said the Prophet ﷺ, a Jew, a young man, powerfully built, with curly hair. Where would he be at that time? Of course, he would be in Jerusalem, ruling the world from Jerusalem. The way the world is now ruled from Washington. But where would he be when he's released on earth? In a day which would be like a year. And where would he be on earth in a day which is like a month? And where would he be on earth in a day which is like a week? Do we have answers for that? Praise be to Allah, who allowed this servant Imran to study international relations, international politics, international economics. The answer, of course, is that when he's released on earth, he would be on that island. And from that island, he will launch his mission to liberate the Holy Land, to bring the Jews back to the Holy Land, to reclaim it as their own, to restore a state of Israel in the Holy Land and get the Jews to believe that this is the holy Israel of David and of Solomon, alayhi salam, and to cause that state of Israel to become the ruling state in the world. Which island is it? In November of 1917, the British government did something which was incredibly strange and mysterious. A Britain, which is now the prince of the secular world. The secular world takes religion out of politics. And Britain is the prince of the secular world. Britain issues a declaration known as the Balfour Declaration in November 1917 that it is the intention of His Majesty's government to work for the establishment of a Jewish national home in the Holy Land. Did you hear that? Why would a secular state, which leads the world of secular states, declare its intention to work for the establishment of a Jewish national home, meaning a Jewish state, in the Holy Land? 2 months later, this was October 1917, in December 1917, it is a British army led by General Allenby which defeats the Ottoman Islamic army and liberates the Holy Land. And when Allenby entered into Jerusalem, the British generals declared, "Today, the Crusades are over." Oh, but the Crusades were supposed to have been Christian wars. And you are now a secular state. You're not a Christian state, you're a secular state. How come a secular Britain is continuing a crusade started by the Pope 1,000 years before? That's strange. That is incredibly strange. Between 1918 and 1948, it is the island of Britain which ruled over the Holy Land on a mandate conferred by the League of Nations. And during that period of time, with tremendous deception, while pretending to keep the Jews out, Britain opened the doors for the Jews of Europe to enter into the Holy Land and to reclaim it as their own. In between came the interlude of Adolf Hitler, which speeded up the movement of the Jews from Europe to the Holy Land. In 1948, Britain did something strangest of all. Britain is a state with a tremendous commitment to the rule of law. And so every time Britain decolonized, there was always an insistence of a legal transfer of power And then you had the flags going up at midnight, and the national anthem and this constitution and so on. A legal transfer of power. It happened in Trinidad as well. But in 1948, when Britain left the Holy Land, she left like a thief in the dark. For the first time, for the only time in British history, there was no legal transfer of power from Britain to the successor state. In 1948, Britain acted as the midwife for the baby to be born, the European Jewish state of Israel. And so my answer is that that island of Tamim Dari is Britain. Now, I notice that when DAJJAL is released in a day which is like a year, and Britain is his headquarters, I notice as a student of international relations, I notice that Britain strangely becomes the ruling state in the world. Come on, you explain to me. How do you explain a little obscure island off the coast of Europe, which never walked on the stage of history? An island that Napoleon contemptuously dismissed as a nation of shopkeepers. How do you explain that that little island establishes its rule over the whole world? Britain rules the world. I want to suggest to you tonight that the only man who can explain the emergence of Britain as the ruling state in the world at the time when it emerged is a man named Muhammad. Allah's blessings be upon him. And the explanation is that this is the work of the Antichrist. In 1940, if you would go back and do some research, you will find, as yet, air power has not as yet come. Your armies commanded the land, and your navy commands the sea. And Britain controls the seas of the world. In 1914, Britain commanded every strategic naval port in the whole world. This was not by accident. It is time for us to sit back now and read history once again. It is because Britain was poised at that moment, commanding the seas around the world, and the Zionist movement had accumulated this vast chest of money through the diamond mines of South Africa. That in the summer of 1914, they were ready to strike with an act of terrorism. An act of terrorism which changed the world. I want to suggest to you that the authors of that act of terrorism in the summer of 1914, through which the Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo, are the same authors who planned and executed the September 11 attack on America. In the summer of 1914, There were 6 major powers in Europe: Britain, France, Russia, Germany, Austria-Hungary. That's 5. That's 5. Number 6? Number 6? Who remembers number 6? Number 6 was the Ottoman Islamic Empire. I mean, we forget about it. 6 major powers in Europe. And the Holy Land was under the control of the Ottoman Islamic Empire. The Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo. And the fingerprints or the footprints, which were of course manufactured, led to Russia. It was intended to lead to Russia. Like September 11 footprints or fingerprints was intended to lead to Arabs and Muslims. And so Austria-Hungary declared war on Russia as George Bush attacked Afghanistan. And then Britain and France, who had a defense treaty with Russia, now came to the assistance of Russia and joined the war. And then Germany entered the war on the side of Austria-Hungary. And then the Ottoman Islamic Empire was pushed, shoved into the war on the side of Germany. And so the stage was set, as the stage is now set today after September the 11th. And the big war took place. But strangely, Britain was losing that war, because Germany unveiled a new weapon of war that had never been used before, the submarine. And when Britain was on her knees, facing defeat, Britain, which was the ruling state in the world, is now facing defeat. Then the German Jews went to the British government and said, let's make a deal. If you will promise to give us the Holy Land, we'll bring the United States into the war on your side. Britain said, deal. You will see all of this on the last day.
The Balfour Declaration was a commitment that the British made to the Zionist movement during the fighting of the First World War, wherein Britain undertook to establish a Jewish national home. So the original commitment is in November 1917, when the British promise the Zionist organization that they would support the creation of a Jewish national home if they win the war. And the question is, why did the British make this announcement? You must understand that each of the Allied powers was trying to curry favor with all sorts of ethnic minorities in Europe in order to gain an advantage in the conduct of war. The British believed that the Jews had a lot of influence amongst the socialist and the Bolshevik governments in Russia. And they thought that if they give the Jews what they want, that'll keep the Bolsheviks happy. Now, that of course is absurd, because the Bolsheviks weren't in the slightest interested in Zionism. It has also been argued that the British shared a biblical vision of the return of the Jews to the Holy Land. In fact, the decision to issue the Balfour Declaration and to undertake this commitment was a hard-headed decision based on diplomatic and strategic needs. In particular, the British were about to invade Palestine, which was still controlled by the Turks. They wanted the assistance of the Jews in Palestine, and they got that assistance. They wanted the support of the American Jewish community. They got that assistance too. So the Balfour Declaration was a very worthwhile document for the British.
There was a guy who had been born in Boston, Massachusetts on December 30th, 1809, a guy by the name of Albert Pike. He was an impressive intellect. He was a Harvard graduate back when it really meant something. He was the master of 16 languages, and he was a despicable son of a... because he openly worshipped Satan. He was part of an organization called the Palatalists. He was the one that converted this Knights of the Golden Dawn to the Ku Klux Klan. And he was the author of a book called Morals and Dogma. It is the most revered text among the Masons, and in this text on page 321, Albert Pike said, "It is Lucifer, the morning light, whose seething energies you must learn to control or implement." So it was this Albert Pike, the same guy that wrote a letter to his superior in the Illuminati, a guy over in Europe by the name of Giuseppe Mazzini, who was the revolutionary leader. And Giuseppe Mazzini also happened to be the founder of the Mafia. This letter that he wrote to Giuseppe Mazzini on August 15 of 1871 outlined 3 world wars. And the first of those world wars was to be fomented between the differences between the German nationals and the Brits, and end up with the downfall of Tsarist Russia and the rise of communism. Any of us who studied any history at all knows that's exactly how World War I took place. Then World War II was fomented between the Zionists, between the German nationalists again, and the Brits to bring us in. And in World War II, Israel was to be born, and the Zionists were given power. So since the first 2 wars came off just exactly as that letter said, and that letter used to hang right in the British Museum library until 1977, when Baron Rothschild became a director. And as soon as he was on the board of directors, that letter disappeared from the library. Immediately.
And so the United States entered into the war. And Britain won the war. In the process, the Ottoman Islamic Empire was defeated, was dismembered, and the Holy Land was liberated for the Jews. And so an act of terrorism led to this strategic target being achieved, the liberation of the Holy Land. But now, the United States takes over from Britain as the new ruling state in the world. In the same way that Britain had a mysterious relationship with the Holy Land and with the Jews, the United States now has that mysterious relationship with the Holy Land and with the Jews. It's not by accident. DAJJAL has completed a day which is like a year, and he's now in a day which is like a month. Phase 2 of his mission. The United States is flying high now because it's about to crash. We are located at that moment in time when a day which is like a month is about to end, and the day which is like a week is about to commence.